What is the fastest you have ever seen a new coworker get fired? Moving company. Midwest. Most people didn't make it through the first week. They will hire literally anyone who can pass a drug test. Turnover was really bad, but I guess that's the nature of the job. I'll never forget Jeremy. Jeremy was 18. Did not apply for colleges. So his parents made him get a job. He was hired as a mover. As is everyone. He shows up the first day to roll call in a full suit and tie, asking where his desk is. This was a group full of former convicts, high school dropouts, and generally rough dudes trying to make a living. We laughed so hard. Jeremy went right back home. Next day, Jeremy's mom shows up to give the manager a piece of her mind. We laughed even harder. During their onboarding training, they stole my boss's wallet on camera. 1 hour in. This is the opposite route here, but I found it amusing. My boss was out of town and I managed a tea shop near a Starbucks years ago. This kid came in, foreign, and said he was supposed to start today. We were hiring and I trained him, etc. My boss came back 2 days later and had no idea. The kid was in the wrong place, but he stayed with us. Hired on the spot without even applying. New guy drove a forklift into a fire hydrant in front of a safety rep for the company. His supervisor was called over, and he immediately tells the supervisor that he won't pass a test, as he used his only bottle of clean earlier that day when he hired in. Everybody standing there immediately burst into laughter, which continued as security, also laughing, escorted him off site. Even the supervisor was all smiles. Just gave him a pat on the back and wished him the best of luck. It was wild. A week. I worked in a bar and a new girl started. At work. She seemed a little rough but was fine. One day she finished a shift, sat at the bar and ordered a red wine with lemonade and ice in it. Not really relevant to the story. Just shows she is clearly insane. Her boyfriend came in. They had a huge domestic in front of my manager and several customers, and she threw her drink over her BF and dramatically stormed out. New bar drink. Heard this from a manager I worked with when I worked in fast food. There was this one kid who didn't show up for work. He ditched work often. So the manager called around. Couldn't get anyone to fill in his shift. So she had to fill it for him. Few hours into his shift, the dude ditching shows up with his friends and orders food from that manager. She fired him on the spot. Edit. These were my first awards. And y'all just multiplied my karma by 10. Thanks y'all for the likes and awards. Congratulations. You've been promoted to a customer. First day of work. He walks in. Says what the is up dumbest to the guy that parked next to, didn't touch his new Camaro he bought since he got hired. The guy was the CEO of the company I used to work for. On visit to our branch. Literally 10 minutes into his shift he was signing release papers. I work construction. We had 2 new hires that were friends starting the same day. Boss told one take a coffee order and come back. Took everyone's money and said he needed his friend to go with him cause it was a big order. They never came back. They quit a construction job to steal and split the cash from a few coffee orders. I imagine if they had stayed and worked a full day they would have earned more than that. Guy got hired. While going through orientation realized that his ex-GF worked there too. Turned around and walked right out the front door. My man. Not sure if it counts as being fired. But a guy in our basic training threatened a drill sergeant with a bayonet. No idea what happened after he went to the hospital. But I didn't see him again. I choose to believe that the DS yelled at him with extreme dedication until he needed medical assistance. Worked in a grocery store for a while. New guy took a lobster out of the tank and removed the elastic bands on its claws. Then proceeded to put it back in the tank. The thing murdered all the other lobsters in the tank. We had a recent college grad that would use his corporate card for personal purchases. He figured that the company would just keep deducting from his payroll until it was paid off. He was fired after 3 months of constant reminders to stop doing it. I don't think it qualifies as the fastest, because he lasted 3 months. But it was so idiotic. A 19-year-old kid got hired to work the seafood counter. See him twice and then never again. Asked a co-worker what happened. He had closed seafood one night and was walking out of the store and the 5 pounds of crab legs he'd stuffed down the back of his pants fell out in front of the closing manager. Edit. It was at a Publix. No. It was not Jammy's Winston. New guy started on Monday and was gone by Friday. The guy hit some racking in the warehouse with the forklift. Boss saw him do it. And the guy decided to lie about it when asked if he knew what happened. Couldn't pass the simple tests given at the end of new hire orientation. Yelled at test facilitator when she wouldn't just take the test for him. This was a pizza place I worked at in college. New guy was started on Thursday. Fine worker, we showed him the ropes. He was on subs, which is the easiest job. The instructions are right in front of your face. Friday he no call no shows, it's Friday. The busiest night of the week. And he and I were the only kitchen workers that weren't also drivers. Monday a police officer shows up at the restaurant looking for him. No idea what happened as he wasn't there. Tuesday the owner informed me he was let go. The IT crew at a large government office worked on a ticket system. Meaning that the government workers submitted their problem online and one of the IT guys would pick it up on their end. The new guy just started his first day. Logged into a computer at an empty office. And submitted a reinstall entire OS request so he could spend all day there. The manager decided to check in on him before lunch to see how he was doing. And he was completely asleep. Fired before they even finished his hiring paperwork. Guy got hired. Went through training and all that jazz. First day on the floor. He disappeared for 3 hours and then came back high as on like meth or something. A manager found him in the bathroom aisle. Staring at himself in the mirror. Said manager looked at the cameras after firing him. The guy was there staring at himself for at least 30 plus minutes. Edit. Edit to clear up some questions. I worked at Home Depot. He was in the aisle where we sell bathroom countertops and medicine cabinets. We also have mirrors in this aisle and that's where he was. Co-worker quit his job. Great job. Great pay. Great benefits to work at a radio repair place. I mean, go to do what you love, and he was also a big radio enthusiast. Got fired the first day on the job for stealing parts for his own radios at home. Took him over a year to get back with us. Surprised they rehired him. He then got fired for being a security risk about a year or so later. Corporate chain restaurant. New server. Aged mid-30s. Third day he was working, we had to fire him mid-shift. Why? Dude went into the public restrooms. With other guests clearly and they're using the urinal. And started doing lines of blow off on the edge of the sink. Where to begin? One person didn't show up for their second day citing culture shock and then spent at least an hour each day complaining about everything to HR. They were gone inside of a month. Some other bloke refused to follow processes and called his manager an irrelevant woman in team meetings. Gone within a week. My favorite was technically a new co-worker from my perspective only, as I'd only just become aware of their existence. They interpreted we're going to retire that server from production as we're going to throw the hardware off of the roof into a skip and proceeded to head down to the data center. Power the thing off in the middle of the day. Drive to his friend's office. Plug the box in and deploy a bunch of IVR scripts he'd derived from our proprietary scripts so they could run a bunch of psychic and SX hotlines. He was gone within 10 minutes of getting that server back. I called a temp agency to get someone to help me count inventory. They sent a guy over with a cast on his arm. That was my first WTF, but I went with it because we were just counting parts. Then I came back from lunch and this dude was in my office chair zoned out and drooling on himself with a can of air duster in his lap. I kicked him awake and escorted him out of my warehouse. Never used that temp agency again. Air duster. Like most inhalants. Can kill you in a snap. Lucky you found an idiot and not a corpse. 5 days. My boss hired an executive chef. Dude didn't even know how to make a quesadilla. Well done. Guy slept through 2 meetings on his first day. The second meeting he started snoring. New director starts. At lunchtime goes to cafeteria. Pays for the first salad plate, by weight. Then goes back twice for refills without paying. Cafeteria has cameras. Cafeteria manager talks to the partner in charge. New director fired before the end of day. Guy had been working a few days at a barn. Decided to smoke right by bales of hay. Manager saw him and fired him right on the spot. At farms, you don't around with fire. A man was hired to do stock at a tea store that sold lots of delicate china. Manager walked into the back on his third day and saw him just throwing boxes of teacups and teapots. Instantly fired. As a teenager, I worked at a bowling alley. Within an hour, a new girl was fired on the spot for dropping a ball on the foot of a complaining patron. She was hired because the manager thought she was hot. Oh. I've got one for this. I was hired to do tech support in a call center. On our first day of training there were about 30 of us in a room and we each had our own computer. The instructor said it was okay to use the computer for personal stuff during downtime, but the only rules were no games and no PRN. One guy got fired before lunchtime because he just couldn't resist the PRN. One guy got fired before lunchtime because he just couldn't resist the PRN. Kids, this is what an actual PRN addiction looks like. Didn't like the boss and on the first day took her in the gas tank of his Jeep. Bragged about it and it was recorded too. About 35 minutes. I hired a guy to work for me as quality inspector for merchandise headed to Walmart and Target. He bragged about everything he stole from his last job during training and how they paid him more than I did. Well, 3 hours into the first shift, guy lost it serving an annoying customer in a grocery shop. Throw a cabbage at her. The manager came and told him to go home cause he finished there. He wasn't surprised. I was standing next to him. It was an entertaining day. Day 1 of training. Within the 6 hour of a 8 hour shift. Worked in an old crank handle service elevator at a private residential condominium for very wealthy people. We told him just shut up and stare straight ahead. Don't speak unless spoken to. Cause old rich people are mean and don't care about you. Well, what's the new guy do? Starts a conversation right away and asks the resident, how much money do you make? Edit. To be more clear. 4 or so hours. When I was 18 I got a job at a grocery store. Along with 3 others. We all started training together. On the first day we were training in the evening. And one girl asked to go home. She said her head hurt. They said fine. She clocked out. Went to grab a grocery cart and started filling it with beer and liquor. The store manager walked over. And asked her if she was having a party. She said yes. Didn't even try to come up with an excuse. Just, yeah, I am. So I needed to leave early on my first day. Basically, he fired her. Coworker. Smoked like every 40 minutes for like 10 minutes. Then asked the boss if he could leave an hour early because he didn't take his lunch break. As my boss said, sure you can. But you don't need to come back. He didn't show up the first day, second day, or third day. I had to work a double shift for 3 days straight. Not fun. I answered the phone when he finally called in on the 4th day. He said, I'm going to be honest with you. I've been in Orlando. My parents paid for a small vacation as a reward for getting the job. Would it be okay to start next week instead of this week? What better way to celebrate the end of unemployment than taking a little break from work? Guy showed up to work on his first day with the smell of alcohol on his breath. 7 AM. When questioned he admitted to taking a couple swigs on the way using to calm his first day nerves. Yeah. Fired on the spot. Worked here less than 20 minutes. This was just a summer job at a fast food place. We had a new girl start and within 2 days it was apparent she was an idiot and everyone knew that. You could already see the manager questioning his decision. Then on her third day of work she said she couldn't come in because her mom was in a car accident and in the hospital. Turns out that's an easy thing to disprove in a relatively small town. I used to do a lot of field work on site investigation programs. Basically we'd hang out on a drill rig while the drillers took rock cores. We'd log the cores, take photos, do some downhole tests, etc. New engineer gets sent to site and gets assigned the night shift. Some people love night shift, but most people don't. Hence sticking the junior with night shift. After 5 nights he calls the office and says he wants to come home because he's freezing and he hates it and he can't do it. Not clear to me if he quit or got fired. But it became plain pretty quickly that this job wasn't for him. I got pulled onto that program. And I asked the drillers what the guy's deal was. They had a propane heater in the back of their van. And despite repeated invitations to sit in the back of the van, Buddy just sat in his truck all night and shivered. In the middle of February, my document processing clerk was getting married and going on his honeymoon, so I got a short-term temp. It wasn't a temp to hire. Everything was out in the open through a legit temp agency who generally did pretty good screening. The temp's very first day, they show up with a box of things. Photos, mugs, office equipment, pen cup, task light, etc. Stuff to decorate a cubicle with. I advised them not to unpack. We were getting right into training. Within 2 hours after I cut them loose on a computer with a "let me know if you need anything or have any questions." They said, "This mouse is hurting my wrist." Gave me carpal tunnel. "I'm going to need workers' comp paperwork." I made an immediate call to the agency ending this contract. Then told the temp, "Your paperwork is at the temp agency office. Go ahead and go see your rep there." They left their box of stuff behind. I had to have the temp agency come pick it up. Before their first day on orientation, I got hired for a manufacturing job through Manpower, a temp agency. Me and a friend of my wife were both supposed to start on Monday at the plant for a week-long orientation. She got into a fender bender on her way to orientation and called them to say that she'd be a bit late. That she just needed to wait on the police to give a statement. The manager told her not to bother ever coming in. Girl was torn up. She took pictures and the police report into the hiring manager. Tried to explain things to the company HR managers. But no dice. She was fired before ever clocking in. Both were at a restaurant. They hired a doorman. Came to work the first day with a gun belt locked and loaded. This was a tiny little New England seafood restaurant and he just needed to check IDs of folks going into the bar. He didn't even get to punch in. On the line we had penne alla vodka on the menu. I don't want to ruin the magic that is cookery, but that dish had vodka in it. I worked for a small city in LA for many years. I was on the board that interviewed for a new intern for the recreation department. We went through the process. Made our choice. Made the job offer to a nice, smart girl fresh out of college. She was a little bit of a hippie. Casual. Relatable. It was fine. All accepted. The girl showed up with her gigantic pet, anaconda, edited python wrapped around her neck on the first day. She took casual to a whole new level. Right back out the door. We hired candidate number 2 instead. Worked at a steel processing plant, polishing, cut to length, etc. Everyone started off as temps. Some for years. Before getting hired in, management decided they were short-staffed and the solution was to start hiring people full-time off the street. So this dude starts. Full-time on day 1. Full benefits. More money. Getting trained by temps who've been there for months, if not years. Everyone is mad resentful of this dude. Obviously. Halfway through his second day he gets escorted out for testing positive for coke on his drug test. Coke stays in your system for like 2-3 days. They didn't hire any more dudes full time off the street. My sister was fired one day one. My dad had his own small medical practice and would hire me and my sisters as our first job to be his receptionist and file insurance claims, so we could get some workplace experience before we went job hunting in the larger world. My older sister worked for him in high school for a year. I worked for him for 2 years. Then it came time for my younger sister to take over. I brought her to work to start training and said the number one rule in the office was, at work he's not dad. He's the doctor and the boss. She sassed him in front of a patient her first day. With all the venom and sarcasm a teenage girl can muster when dealing with a parent asking her to do something. He fired her on the spot and I had dragged her out of there. Mom told her at least she'd get paid for the couple of hours she managed to be employed. Edited. My first wholesome award. Thanks. He was escorted out by security on his second day and promptly delivered to waiting police officers, about 5 of them. He'd apparently beaten his wife pretty severely and then just left for work like NBD. Never thought that they'd come looking for him. I dunno if this counts as fired or quitting, but I was working at a grocery store, and in the morning we have to unpack the stuff from the truck. Well, this girl was on her second day. First time throwing truck. And she asked the manager to go out to her car to get something really quick. Long story short, she just drove off in the middle of her shift and never came back for another. Had a girl show up for her first day then no call no show for the next 3 days. I was fired on my second day as a line cook at a Mitzel's restaurant in Washington State back in the 90s. Turns out I was hired just to threaten the job security of a long-time line cook with an attitude problem. To keep him in line. He got the message and apologized to the manager. And I was fired for breaking yolk when flipping fried eggs one time. I'd been a line cook for a few years by then and thought I was doing pretty good. I was taken out the back door and terminated on day 2. Edit. This really seems to be blowing up. Happened in Oak Harbor back in mid 1990s. So yes. I did find another job since then. I was Ed. But got over it quickly. Cooking for a living was hard work. Standing in a hot kitchen for 10 hours at a time. Going home splattered with grease. Getting yelled at by waitstaff and management. I don't do it anymore. Thanks for all the HUGZ awards. Guys. Bookkeeper. The guy was hired as a senior auditor for the international subsidiaries of our group. Referred to credit and debitors left and right. Maybe bringing a machete into the office on day 2 to slice a watermelon wasn't advantageous either. I know exactly that 99% will find the machete funnier. But for bookkeepers, the first thing is pure cringe. Less than a week. Hired a new guy at the shop I worked at. When he got hired he did some side work at his house and claimed he did the work at said shop. He put a motor in a truck for some kid and the motor blew. Kid's mom comes to the shop raising hell over our tie work. GM was out of town on a business trip so when he came back that Friday he fired him. This happened last week. New girl is hired and right off the bat starts telling me that she regrets taking this job, despite being unemployed for 4 months. Because there are so many new people so it must be a bad job because high turnover. Not really true. We just got bought by a large company and they are hiring more people because we have more business. She tells us all about how it's her birthday and she's going drinking after work. Does a no call no show the next day which is her 3rd day. We all assume she quit. But the next day she comes in and starts just trying to work like nothing happened. The supervisor asked what happened and she said she got in a minor car accident. He asked why she didn't call and she said she doesn't have a cell phone. Despite being on her cell phone constantly in the office. He decided to give Jay one more chance but gave her a lecture about how she needs to communicate properly about missing work. And one more incident will be an automatic firing. Next day no call no show. New guy started at work, a bar. Seemed pretty cool. 3 days later we were all sitting around having an end of shift drink when the manager calls the new guy into the office and fires him. New guy isn't 21 yet. Why would you drink at work when the manager damn well knows your age? First week. He's called over to the unstuffed truffle counter by customer. Hasn't been trained in truffles. So he just grabs one from the display case and sells it to the customer. He doesn't know the display truffles are made of plastic and the customer has already paid $90 for it when he realizes. Still not sure if it was an honest mistake or if he was planning to pocket the money. Either way. Fired. Opposite story. At an IT student job at my university. One guy figured out how to automate his punches and got paid for months without showing up. When the university found out, they sent a manager to make sure he was actually there for a vert shift. He was never fired and they still paid him for the full shifts. They didn't really care about the job, since they got a tax break just for hiring students.